and therefore I will try my own bit at it, but I can make it shorter thanks to, first of all, Paul's wonderful presentation. Also, I think the discussion of the root causes led by Vesma and others was excellent. You mentioned particularly the economic aspect. I would like to underscore also, from the Egyptian experience at least, the quest for dignity. The grand larceny of the November 2010 election got everybody out of joint because it was just unbearable. And I think that dignity, that call for dignity was absolutely essential. Well, I think we've all agreed that there's so many uncertainties because it's early days. President Sampaio at a meeting at the Arab League office in front of a cohort of good thinkers about the reminded that in Portugal it had taken 8 years and the country was not in just as much of a turmoil as the Arab world. If you look at what happened in the Soviet Union and Russia, it's still an ongoing process and also not necessarily a very good one. And even for the East European who are members of the EU, it is trial and tribulation. So we all agree that what is happening in the Middle East is absolutely hugely important and transformative, but it is so early stage that we cannot draw, or we cannot put too much haste in the conclusion we're trying to draw. And that's where it is so critical when you look at what governments can do, because the policy implications are very much linked to the interpretation that is given to those events. And you've noticed that once the euphoria across the Western world abated somehow, the government started being cautious, and ours much more than others. Now, there's a myth out there that in the West there is this tendency to refer to calls for democracy spreading into the region. I agree there's been a strong appeal for a new kind of relationship between the governed and the government, and that would suggest an inherent democratic flavor. But in these movements, I really think that for me the most fundamental that I saw from Egypt, I don't know if Michel and I don't necessarily agree on that, but I think it was an urge, really an urge for change and a call for freedom more than anything else. And democracy could actually be an outcome as a byproduct, but not necessarily. And I think that's, you've got to be very careful when you do the analysis. What is also interesting is because we all agree that the evolution and the revolution is very much internally focused, and so for once, despite some urge and pressure and demand, actually the West hardly mingled into the main events in Tunisia and Egypt. On the other hand, because of protection of civilian and other elements referred to, in the case of Libya, we did intervene. Now, as far as the government of Canada was concerned, it was okay with the revolution, but and everybody mentioned it, but I'll try and twist it in a more positive way because I've just left government, is that the concern for Israel's security is the single prism through which the whole events are being looked at. I think there are other prisms, and we all should encourage the government to look at the other prism. But the government itself did focus on economic assistance and not just on the human rights and democracy and the rule of law. But there was no real endorsement beyond that. And in a way, you know, I'm sorry, but it's still a military regime in Egypt. You know, and let's be clear, and events have proven it more than required, unfortunately, because the additional deaths that happened in Tahrir Square. So in a way, if you look at that perspective, the encouragement is somewhat mute, but it should be, there probably should be more engagement. Now, the question, I guess, if you look at the future, is can Canada and the Arab world be partnered for the future? And it's a key question, and in a way, given the fact that we are so much at the early stage, it's probably better to ask that general question rather than debating the specifics. Now, let me just remind you of a few facts. First of all, close to 2% of the Canadian population are of Arab origin, while the Jewish community, since there's always that comparison is made, well, it's about 350,000. There are over 10,000 students from the region that are studying in Canada annually, and just in Egypt, there's about 8,500 young Egyptians studying in Cairo-based Canadian institutions. The two-way merchandise trade, and I agree with everybody who said that the economy is a very important factor. Two-way merchandise trade reached about 21 billion in 2008, that's pre-crisis, which was of its own a 41% increase over 2007. And we have all kinds of structure existing. We have foreign investment protection agreement with Lebanon, with Egypt, we have an FTA with Jordan, Kuwait, Israel, we have a nuclear cooperation agreement with Jordan, there are FTA talks with Morocco. So there is some ferment of economic cooperation. It's just that the message from top doesn't lead to a sense of importance of the region, even though on the ground there are some. The Canadian investors are increasing their presence. Of course, they're not as big as the European or the Americans, all that, but in the oil and gas, I could list 5, 6, 7 companies that are there, in fertilizer, in franchising, and investors from the broad MENA region hold about $6 billion worth of investment in Canada, and our Canadian foreign direct investment, despite all the problem and all that, still hovers around $3 billion. So you've got to look at that. And so there are some fundamental interests for Canada there, and our objective, even though, as we pointed out, they're certainly not realized in a very good way, we still have this goal of fostering stability, security, and all of that as a condition, the Middle East as a condition of our global security. And we still want to play an effective role in the Middle East peace process based on our existing competencies. Whenever there's a meeting, we always remind them that we are prepared to deal with the refugee situation. This being said, before we get to the refugee situation, there's a hell of a long way to go, but that's another question. But it is an area where we did do good in the past, and we are still willing to do some more. And of course, we've got all those interests about democratic principles, human rights, rule of law, etc. And there is a real interest on the part of the business community to increase its presence in the region, but it would like to have more support from the government, and I've been told that time and again. Now, I think that Louis and others have highlighted the huge impediments that are affecting our policy there, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Iran issue, and also the general problems of governance, which do not seem to lead us to do much in helping out those issues of governance. And there are some structural, I'm delighted that Michael mentioned those structural weaknesses that are like population growth and education. Now, Besma talked about no more education. I think she's right, but it should be highlighted that what the country needs is the right kind of education, because we've done primary and preschool models in Egypt, and I can tell you the difference between, and again, Canadian models are not models. What we do is we get the genius of the local guys who know something, develop a different, a school model or some kind of a parameters of preschool education, and then the Egyptians do it, and then they realize that the change is absolutely huge, and that's what I want to emphasize, the right kind of education. And of course, rent-seeking economies like Egypt, particularly, there's not enough economic diversification. But that applies also to the GCC, because once you pass them all, there's not much new. So, the future, absolutely untapped potential for expanded relations. And on top of that, if the Arab world is indeed modernizing and transforming, then Canada has much to offer to that transformation, whether it's infrastructure, IT, financial institutions, service, food, and agriculture. So we've got the wherewithal to help if we want to do it, and both sides would benefit from that expansion. Now, the question is, can the revolution, the Arab Revolution, right now the Arab Spring, could be a catalyst? I don't know yet, but before that, there's the major obstacle that we need to overcome. And one of the most principal one is the lack of knowledge and understanding about each other. I think this, and this is where I'm always surprised. A group like this one should be the spokesperson for that better understanding, but we don't register much on the Richter scale of attention, and that may be something that we should work on. We've got to work on expanding the people-to-people links. We cannot develop a mature relationship in political, economic, commercial, social, cultural, and if you don't have those people-to-people link. And right now, maybe it's a bit wishful thinking, but I wouldn't want to say that in front of the NCCAR, so I haven't said it. But also, any partnership must have a better sense of the diversity of Canada and the Arab world. And so, the engagement is not broad brush, I shall engage the Arab world. No, we've got to engage individual Arab government with patience, with understanding, with tact, as Michael said so well. And we've got involved not just the federal government, the Canadian provinces, We've got to have the regional, the local, municipal government. You know, the global cities movement is one of the one that one should look at. The business and trade association, the NGOs, etc., and particularly within the Arab communities in Canada. And I agree it's a tall order. Now, specific proposal. Well, for instance, we should reopen, and I'm sure that Clovis will agree with me. If you don't agree, then I'll walk out. You stay. We've got to reopen the permanent mission of the Arab League of States in Canada. I hope you agree to this. Can I sign? Okay, please take the signature on the way out. We also have, and I tried, but this is top secret, so I cannot say it. No, but really, in a much more formal accreditation of Canadian diplomatic representative to the Arab League in Cairo. I was always invited to those meetings, but you know, there was a small little vignette saying, you know, Ambassador of Canada, but that was courtesy because we didn't have an MOU officially accrediting us. And we have to pay credit to this extraordinary Secretary General of the Arab League, our great friend, who's a great friend of Canada, Nabil El-Arabi, who's a wonderful man, and he's inducing changes in the Arab League, and so we should seize the opportunity and recognize his action because it's really wonderful. We should expand the relationship between Canadian and Arab parliamentarians to the Parliamentary Assembly of the League of Arab States, provided, and I think that's going to happen, that they also mature politically, and I think that's also a very good sign that could be helpful on the revolution side. Again, coming back to culture and education, I think we've got to find a way to expand the exchanges at every level, particularly at the higher education, because in terms of knowledge and understanding of the Arab world in Canada, that's where we'll probably score better results. And you know, you've got some wonderful institutions in Canada, like the McGill Institute of Islamic Study. You have also Université de Montréal. You've got scattered institutions that, unfortunately, because it's universities, do not talk to one another. There's a lot of stovepiping, and I think a bit of horizontal thinking between the various universities, institutes, and all that, to try and see what we can synergize to really get this understanding enhanced. And you know, I don't have to go too long on the obstacle, because after all, we talked about the perception in the Arab League countries of Canada's attitude to the peace process, and you know, I've heard it time and again that we've left from our traditional balanced approach, that we've moved away from multilateralism, that we don't have a dialogue, we're lagging behind. Anyway, that's the soundbite from friendly people among the Arab League countries. But there's another but, and I'd like to emphasize that one, and I'll be closing very rapidly because I still have one and a half minutes. You know, it's funny. There have been Arab and Muslim communities in Canada for more than 100 years. For more than 100 years. And there, as I said, there's more than half a million Canadians of Arab origin. And yet, Arab and Muslim communities in Canada are diverse, which is great, but there's also divided, which is far less great, because those communities have not been particularly effective in getting the government to engage, and the Arab and Muslim countries themselves have been remarkably ineffective in engaging Canada. So you've got to look at it from both sides, and my conclusion is it's not just up to governments to get the relation on a new level, and particularly when that is lacking, you know, others have to pick up the slack. But the government have to create the enabling environment so other forces in societies can take it from there to the benefit of all parties. So my bottom line, the Arab world is way too important to be ignored. Thank you very much.
You would follow this kind of ambassador very far